One.
Welcome everybody to this event, Oracle and Microsoft Negotiation Clinic. I am Fredrik Philipson at Readers Compliance, and with me I have Floris Klaver from LicenseQ and Eric Hollander from LicenseQ. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fredrik.
Thanks for hosting.
Yes, we will be starting in let's start 2 minutes after the hour mark. But maybe we can start with just introducing ourselves and what is our background. Can you start, Eric, by introducing yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Eric Hollander. Together with Floris, I'm the founder of LicenseQ. We are a young company. We only exist for almost a year now. Before that, I was a negotiator at Microsoft. And I've always been working with Microsoft contracts and licensing in the past 15 years.
Okay, and you, Floris, what's your background?
Yeah, so my background is in Microsoft contracting and licensing as well. Prior to starting our own company last year, I've been working at Microsoft for around 10 years as a commercial executive. So that means that we did contract negotiations and anything licensing and contracting related. So some of the information that we have is straight from the source. Hope that we can help you guys with it.
Okay, great that you both could join. My background is familiar, but I used to work for Oracle for 9 years. And for the past 6 years, I've been working as a consultant, helping companies around the world with Oracle licensing, contracts, and negotiations. And something I sort of at least learned is that I'm by no means, I think the people here are much better at negotiation than me. So what I help clients with is that what kind of discounts can you get from Oracle? What should you be saying to Oracle in different situations? And what are the contract terms that you can request from Oracle? What are the standard ones? What's the non-standard ones? What is negotiable and what is not? So there's a bit of a difference here that I am not negotiating on behalf of our client. I'm just providing them with business intelligence to make sure that they get the best deals.
Yeah.
So you guys are based in the Netherlands, but tell me, where are your clients based?
Yes, we are based in the Netherlands, but our clients are actually from all over the world. I think 50% of our clients is from the Netherlands, and we have clients in Mexico, in the United States, also in Asia. So yeah, especially with this current economic climate where everyone is working online, we don't have any boundaries to work with clients all over the globe. So we are happy to help all types of clients all over the world. And how is that for you?
It's the same for us, that we help clients in the Middle East, North America, US, Canada, Europe. And we're a small company, but we're based in 7 different countries. So, and I often say that we were sort of born for this world where everybody's working from home.
Yeah.
I think so. Is there any difference between how Microsoft treats its customers in different parts of the world? Maybe I can ask that question before we start.
Yeah, good question. It does actually. So you tend to see that every culture has his own, culture within the Microsoft subsidiary. So, for instance, the Dutch culture is very direct, very partner-driven. But we see, for instance, in Germany, a totally different market where there is a very direct and aggressive approach towards clients. So really diverse per country. It's not a one-size-fits-all. And for instance, in France, we've seen some clients who are working with the account team for like 7 or 10 years. And in the Netherlands, the average account team is there for approximately 2 years. So it really depends on the type of country you are located in, how Microsoft operates. But we luckily have some insight into that. So yeah. And how is that for Oracle then? Is that the same approach or perhaps a bit different?
It is almost the same everywhere. I think what I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to talk about how does Oracle work internally, how the sales team set up, how they compensated. Then I'm going to talk about a bit about how to negotiate ULAs, how to negotiate cloud. I did the poll actually here just because I sort of want to know what are people interested in, and actually did read a few slides based on that answer. But generally, Oracle have the same playbook everywhere. There might be a few countries where they're very different, such as Russia and Brazil, for example. But in 95% of the world, it's basically the same commercial setup that Oracle have. I think I'm going to start now. For you who don't know the agenda, I'm going to cover the Oracle negotiations, and that's going to take 40 minutes. Hopefully, I will be a bit shorter. If you have any questions on Microsoft or Oracle, please ask them in the comments field, because I think when I'm talking about Oracle, Floris and Eric will be able to answer questions about Microsoft, and I will try to answer questions on Oracle when I'm finished. With that, I think there's lots of people here that have not been on our events before. It would be great if you want to connect with us. Just go to the speaker tab here and just connect with all of us. With that, I'm going to start. So let's start by looking at the latest quarterly results from Oracle. And you can see here that they have made approximately $10 billion in revenue. And what are these different categories? And you can see that the cloud services and license support is essentially Oracle that have bundled together cloud services and on-premise support maintenance contracts. And you can look back in a few years and you can sort of calculate the breakout. And the breakout for this is that approximately 5 billion out of this is Oracle support maintenance contracts. So essentially 50% or even maybe close to 55% is basically Oracle getting money from previously sold licensing agreements that they're just collecting maintenance money for. The cloud license and on-premise license is essentially on-premise licenses. And you can see that their license business is only 11%. It's quite small. So when people think about Oracle, they might have thought, well, yes, they're trying to transition to a cloud company, but the cloud is maybe 20% and the license business is only 11%. And and the big chunk of Oracle's money comes from the on-premise support contracts that they have sold in the past. You can see the hardware business, 9%, and it's constantly declining. And then they have some services that they sell, such as advanced customer support and different other Oracle technical services. What can we make of this? So I had a look at 5 years ago, the same report, Oracle Q2, and you can see that Oracle license sales is down 20% compared to 5 years ago. I can see that the hardware sales business is basically declining every quarter. So my question is, when will Oracle spin off its hardware business? Oracle have, in 2017, they had a revenue of $9 billion. But they made a NetSuite acquisition 1 year later, which was $800 million in revenue. So if you deduct that revenue, basically Oracle have the same revenue as it had 5 years ago. And if you compare that to other software vendors, I think in Microsoft, which Floris and Eric knows a lot better than me, I think they actually, Salesforce, they see growth 15-20% year on year, while Oracle is basically have the same revenue as it had 5 years ago. So it shows a company that is not really doing that well. So what is happening at Oracle? Let's talk about how they're organized. Oracle have different sales reps per product. So depending on what products you have from Oracle, you have you might have technology products and you might have application products. You're going to have 2 different salespeople, and you might have a different person for hardware products as well. And it's quite difficult to navigate this. But the key here is to know who do you need to negotiate with Oracle. I think the most important thing is the support renewals. Your account rep, the person that you're speaking to most regularly, is not compensated on support renewals. They're only compensated on new product sales and consumption. All of the Oracle sales reps have a 12-month sales target, which means that they have a very short-sighted view of their customer relationships, and which means that if you're not looking at buying something in the 12-month cycle, often Oracle or the sales rep is not really interested in meeting up with you. I think many customers have heard when you're speaking to Oracle, do you have any project that involves Oracle in the next 12 months? If you tell them no, not in the 12 months, but maybe next year, you'll probably not hear from Oracle at all, or you might get an audit letter from Oracle because they think like if you're not going to buy anything from Oracle in the next 12 months, they might audit you. And as I said, none of them have the overall responsibility of your relationship with Oracle. There's not one person that you can talk to that is responsible for all businesses. Well, some large companies that have a key account director. There's some account reps at Oracle say they're a key account director when they are not. But there are a few very large accounts, I think it's maybe a few hundred globally, that have this key account director who is responsible for the overall relationship. And they have a 3-year compensation target. So they view their relationship with you in a longer perspective than just, okay, do you have any new business for Oracle in the next few years or in the next 12 months? So what does it mean for you? Know who to negotiate with and who has a stake in you investing in a new product. There's also extremely limited value in bundling a purchase. Let's say that you're looking at buying technology products from Oracle, and then you are looking at buying applications. If you're negotiating with a sales rep who is compensated on technology sales, and you say, we might buy this other product here, can we get a better discount? No, most likely not, because they are the person that it's 2 different sales organizations. If this would be one person, and they would say, wow, my new contract with you will double. Of course, I can give a little better discount. But in this case, no, because there's 2 different sales organizations or sales reps. So there's very little value in just bundling things. And the support renewal that every Oracle customer renews every year, there's a separate organization for that, and they don't view that as new business. They try to portray that as we don't negotiate at all on that one. So having a support renewal that's up for renewal cannot get you a better deal if you're simply saying we're going to renew our Oracle support maintenance and we're going to buy a new cloud service or on-premise license. Can we get a better discount? No, it's not possible. And also this 12-month compensation plan, often a negotiation strategy can be that by saying if you give us this discount for this cloud service or on-premise deal, we are going to buy more from Oracle in next year. There's very little incentive for that, because essentially the sales rep who you're negotiating with is sitting there and can decide for himself, well, I'm not going to be having this customer after 12 months, or I might be leaving to Salesforce or SAP or some other company. And they don't really view that as an incentive to get more discount by promising, future business. I like this. I'm a very visual person, so I like this to explain how it works. And it's maybe the same, or not the same, but your company or your employer might have the same sort of structure for approvals. So this is internally at Oracle. They have different levels for approval. So the more discount you need to get, the higher up in the approval chain the sales rep needs to go. So if you look at here's we as the Oracle customer, and then you have your account rep or account manager. You might be negotiating here between you and the account manager, but he or she does not have any mandate or have extremely little mandate to give any discounts, any non-standard terms. Doesn't really have much to approve at all. But depending on what you are requesting, the higher up in the approval chain he or she needs to go. And they also need they have an centralized approval system where they need to justify why customer A needs to have this discount, why do they need to have this contract term. And if you think about it, the higher up in the approval chain it goes, the more scrutiny is being put on the deal. So essentially, you have this HQApp approval, which is the highest approval chain. I think what I sort of want to say here is that you should be understanding or asking your account rep, how difficult is it for you to give me this discount or this approval item, or because the higher up you need to go in the approval chain, the bigger the chances for a failure. Why do many negotiations fail with Oracle? It's like in your own company. They need to request approval for discounts or whatever you're asking for. And it could be anything that's failing the discount. It could be that the Oracle sales rep cannot justify your discount or contract term request. It could be that they are not really that good in writing a business case justification. So you have a negotiation with Oracle and they go to their Oracle office and then they're going to write an approval. If they're not really able to write a good approval, your negotiations fail. So often I sort of check with our clients, how long has this person been at Oracle? If he or she has just started 1 or 2 years, there's a big chance that they are not able to articulate why you should have this discount. While if you have a very experienced Oracle account rep, they're very good at writing approvals. They also know what are the business approvals team looking at for in their approval request to get it approved. And what can you do about it? You can help him or her by providing a business justification. Why do you need the discount? And you always, if you want to have a good agreement with Oracle, you must make Oracle believe that you have an alternative to Oracle. If Oracle knows that you're going to choose Oracle, your discount will always be much lower, and your contract terms will not be as good as the company that have a competitive scenario for Oracle. And this might be trying to explain how it works here is that many negotiations fail because you start by saying we need to have a discount, and you request a discount for this, and let's say that they ask for 55% discount. But what is happening is that if you have not provided them with a contract terms list, these are the contract terms that we need to negotiate for. They will go internally at Oracle and do this business justification and apply for a 55% discount, and then you have a standard term contract. And Oracle comes back to you as a dear customer and say, yes, you have it approved, 55% discount. And then you tell them, but now can you share a contract with me because we need to negotiate the terms as well. What will then happen is that you have a 55%, the Oracle sales rep have a 55% discount approved for you. But that's attaching the standard terms. If then the Oracle sales rep needs to go internally at Oracle and say, well, I need to have non-standard terms and these contract concessions, and I want to have the 50% discount that I was approved before. What will happen is that the management or the business approvers at Oracle will essentially look at this. Why are you coming back now? We give you 55% discount with standard terms. Now this customer wants to have 55% discount and these contract concessions that provide additional value. We can give you these contract as concessions if you lower the discount, so you might only get 40%. So my strongest advice for this is that you need to tell the Oracle sales rep, I am aware that you have a centralized approval system at Oracle. Let's negotiate the discount and please share a contract template with me at the same time so that we can negotiate both the discounts and the contract terms. Once you have the whole package negotiated between you and the account rep, then you tell the account rep, now we're finished, trying to get it approved, and then you might actually have to help him or her on the business justification. So I used to work at Oracle, and there was so many cases where it might have been that the Oracle sales rep, even before starting the negotiation, they knew that there was an opportunity with let's say customer A, and they made an approval request for 60% discount. And that was a mistake, because then the business approvers are thinking that discount has already been granted on standard terms. So it's important to tell the Oracle sales rep that do not make a formal approval request, because there's many times where they will not get your contract approved if they do so. So Oracle ULAs. How do you negotiate an Oracle ULA? So first off, there's no ULA price list. Minimum price is almost always $1 million net license. The worst ULAs are signed based on large non-compliance. So what Oracle does is that they try to come up, what is the value of a ULA for you? And if you are found, let's say there's a license gap and Oracle is aware of that for $50 million, for example, the ULA price will be based on that. It might not be $50 million, but it might be $10 million. But if you would have a negotiation scenario where you're telling Oracle, we are choosing between an Oracle ULA or some other vendor, you might be paying a $1 million ULA. And this is sort of that there is no transparent pricing for ULAs, which is why companies that have a ULA and want to exit the ULA, at the end, Oracle is making an audit of your environment. And then if they find that you're non-compliant for your Oracle ULA at the end of your first ULA, it might be a $50 million non-compliant, then your ULA renewal will be much higher priced potentially than what you paid for the first one. So in this case, just be very cautious about what Oracle knows about how much you're going to deploy in the future. If you approach Oracle, they will ask and say, we're interested in Oracle ULA. Oracle will almost always ask for, okay, please provide some estimates on how much you will grow the Oracle installations in the next 3 years. And then they will sort of make a calculation and apply a discount to that. Other times, Oracle just adds, if you have an old ULA, they might just add a 10-15% to that ULA. But the best ULAs are where you can basically say to Oracle, we are going to exit our ULA or not sign a ULA, go with someone else. Then you might pay as little as a $1 million for your ULA. If you can actually search online for Oracle ULAs, so I constantly forget, but in the US, there's a public, if you're in the States, for example, they have many times signed Oracle ULAs. You can find maybe around 10 public ULAs from Oracle, and you can look at the pricing and you can see how it's different. And essentially, this is about you making sure that Oracle thinks that you're either not going to choose an Oracle contract or have a competitive. That's the best ULAs. The worst ULAs are when you're telling Oracle, well, we are non-compliant or we're going to grow with Oracle this much. Something else to know about Oracle ULAs is more products. yes, it can be more value, but it doesn't always give you a higher price. So, or let's say that you have 5 products in your ULA and you want to add 2 products. The price will not always go up if you add new products or more products to your ULA. But I would be very careful before you add existing contracts. Let's say that you have an Oracle technology or database ULA. You want to be very careful before you add a WebLogic contract to the ULA, because essentially any products that you any support contracts that you add to your ULA, you would never be able to reduce or remove that support contract until you will pay support for it until you leave Oracle altogether. And if you're a large company, I actually advise never attach quantities to your ULA. If you're, let's say you have a ULA for unlimited for database and database options, then you have some other products. Those and you buy 24 or 50. Those products should not be part of the same contract, because you want to have the ability to terminate those products in the future. ULAs can be anything from 1 to 5 years or last forever, which is called Oracle Perpetual ULA. And just asking for another year will not always increase the price. Just something to be aware of, that if you have a 3-year ULA, you can ask for 4-year and doesn't always increase price. Here's a benchmarking that I looked at, I think around 40 or 50 different ULAs that I had a look at. And this is actually in euros, but you can see here how much companies paid for their ULAs. And then we made an estimate how good are the contracts based on the contract term, because you can have a very limited ULA that cannot achieve much, and what's the value of that, because you have to pay more if you want to expand the usage. But I would say if you are anything between 1 million euro and 3 million euros, you're probably in a good space. If you paid more than that, you have overpaid to Oracle. And as I said, there is no price list for this. It's not based on number of employees, not based on how much Oracle software you have. It's based on what is the negotiation scenario that you create for Oracle. 5 ULA terms to negotiate in your Oracle ULA. You should be negotiating the customer definition. That should be listing all subsidiaries, that all legal entities that are accessing and using the Oracle software. Because if you want to add more in the future, or let's say that you missed something that you need to add additional entities, Oracle might charge you for that. The territory should be worldwide. Do not accept any limitations of specific countries. Make sure this is deployment usage worldwide. And this clause means that where can you physically deploy your Oracle servers. Technical support. If anyone is aware that Oracle technical support increased by 4% every year, you should be negotiating a cap here, so it's a 0% increase. If you have an Oracle ULA and are paying a few $1 million in support every year, I think it's 1 million is $40,000 saved. So over 3 years, it's $120,000. So you should be having a 0% increase on your technical support. Something to be aware of is that if you do not upgrade your Oracle software in the pace that Oracle likes you to, you will move into extended support. And extended support costs 10 to 20% more additional. And you will not feel the impact of that until you leave your Oracle ULA and you tell Oracle that you're running older versions of Oracle software, that you need to pay maintenance for that. So, but you can negotiate a contract term in your ULA that waiver this extended support cost. So it could be a 10 to 20% savings on your support cost. Pay attention to merger and acquisitions, because Oracle ULAs are not really ideal for companies that are heavily involved in acquisitions. And because if it's a pandemic, more companies are being acquired. But Oracle have 2 different routes how to deal with merger and acquisitions with ULAs. First off, if you have a ULA and you're acquired, the ULA is basically terminated or being exited. So what will happen if you're a company, you have a ULA, someone's buying your company, that ULA will go into an exit phase. So you need to make sure that you're prepared for that. But if you're acquiring companies, Oracle have two different contract models. Either you can choose that you can acquire a company, maximum 10% of your employee base or 10% of your revenue base. So you need to look at what is the right contract language for us. If you would be acquiring a company that says 20 and you have an employee acquisition clause and you're acquiring a company with 20% of your total employees, you need to negotiate and pay money to Oracle to include that company in your ULA. 5 recommendations on ULA negotiations. First off, as I said before, provide Oracle with conservative growth estimates. If they're asking you for numbers, how much you're going to deploy Oracle, make sure that those numbers are as low as possible. They need to be ridiculously low. What you can do is basically you can look at Oracle's price list. It's public, it's available online. Just Google Oracle Technology Price List. And then you can sort of look at the products you want in your ULA. Then you maybe look at, okay, do we have 20 licenses a year in a growth? And then you apply 60-70% discount. That's how they do that. Make sure that that you don't sign a ULA because you're non-compliant and Oracle found out, because then you're going to be overpaying for it. Review existing contracts to understand if they should be included in the ULA. Because one of the mistakes that, let's say you're negotiating with Oracle and you're saying that the price is too high for the ULA. Oracle often say, yeah, if it's too high, we can include this product for free here. You already have a contract with us. We can give you unlimited usage right for that product as well. But that product is part of a different contract, and it might be a support cost associated with that. If you include that product in the ULA, it will be locked in. You cannot terminate the support in the future. So even though Oracle might seem like it's a nice thing to give you unlimited, it's a trap, because I come across companies all the time that have put in too much products into their ULAs. They have database products, they have BI products, they have WebLogic. And now they're saying, hey, we don't use the WebLogic, or we want to reduce that. And I'm telling you, no, you cannot. So many companies that have ULAs or exited ULAs, they have maybe 30 to 40% of their maintenance cost is wasted and they can't get rid of it. Benchmark, what did other companies pay for the ULA? Essentially, avoid overpaying here. Think about including non-standard terms in your ULA. Oracle is kind of, they give you a ULA contract, and if you don't know, and let's say the ULA contract contains standard terms, but there are also non-standard terms that are not part of the contract. So here's a good thing, that if you work with someone like, for example, Readers Compliance, we can tell you which are the contract terms that are not included in the standard contract and can give you savings. Because you need to be able to tell Oracle, okay, thank you for your ULA contract, but we also want to have these non-standard terms in our ULA, and that's going to provide value for you. And it's usually things that it's going to impact savings on support and even licensing, but it could be worth as much as 5 to 10% more discount. Just want to mention, exiting an Oracle ULA can be a nightmare. My estimate is probably more than 50% of all Oracle ULA customers end up renewing their ULA because they're out of compliance with their ULA. So you can be basically out of compliance for different reasons. We have a few videos on YouTube about this, how you can be non-compliant with your ULA. Readers Compliance on YouTube. I suggest that you watch them. I strongly recommend that you negotiate the certification clause to make sure that you give your company a strong negotiation position when you want to exit. And potentially you're saving your company a whole renewal fee, because many companies approach us and say, we want to renew our ULA. We want to exit our ULA, but in the end, they are non-compliant and have to renew, and they're paying millions when they didn't want to or need to. How to negotiate cloud agreements. Number one, I think what I'm coming across now is when you sign an Oracle Cloud agreement, it is not pay as you go. It's a commitment over multiple years. And essentially what you do is you buy a 4 or 5 year agreement with Oracle Cloud. And it's so very common that you sign the contract and then 1 year later, let's say you signed a contract for $5 million. And then in year 2, you're going live. So essentially you wasted the whole first year. You wasted $1 million. What you need to do is to negotiate a contract term called phase deployment for cloud services, which essentially allows you to pay very little in the first year, just maybe test and development or pilot users, and then in year 2 or whenever you're going live, that's where you're starting to pay for your cloud services. And for example, if you sign, just to make sure, if you sign a 4 to 5 year agreement with Oracle, you can never get the money back. It's non-refundable. Even if the cloud is, doesn't work, or if it's a complete failure, you have to pay the money to Oracle. There was a company that approached me and said, we signed an Oracle Cloud agreement, 1.5 years ago. Then the pandemic hit. We had to put a halt to it. Now our CEO wants the money back for the first year. Can you help us negotiate that? And I said, no, it's not possible. You're not going to get the money back. So, and this is probably this term and the first thing here is probably worth more than the discounts. Essentially, if you're signing a 5 year contract here and you're wasting 1 or 2 years, well, 1 year is 20% and 2 years is 40%. Also, if you have an on-premise environment with Oracle running applications, and Oracle is not making it that easy for companies to move to Oracle Cloud, but you have an on-premise support contract running for your on-premise environments, and then you're signing a cloud agreement, you can have a double cost, and then you're probably paying your outsourcing provider, current one. But at least what you should be asking Oracle is to have something called contract term shelving and transition program, which allows you to not pay maintenance for your on-premise environment in the first year. So let's say you sign a contract now with Oracle, it's 30th of January, and you do not have to pay the on-premise contract for 1 year, and while you transition to Oracle Cloud. So it could be, potentially save you a lot of money as well. Something else is that if Oracle have a strategy of approaching their install base. So everybody that has Oracle applications, for example, is a good example. And they reach out to the business application owners and talk about, you are running Oracle EBS. This is Fusion Cloud, and they having conversations with the EBS owner or the business IT, maybe for 1 year. And then the business IT says to Oracle, yeah, we want to go with Oracle Cloud, but you need to talk to IT procurement about negotiating a contract. Then this contract lands at the IT procurement table. And now you're going to negotiate with Oracle. I'll tell you that Oracle's been talking to your company for over a year. They might have had 50 calls, and basically the owner of application owner of EBS have told Oracle, we are going to go with cloud. There might be some reasons for, they want to have maintenance or whatever, but essentially you have nothing to negotiate about. Oracle already knows that you're going to go to their cloud. What the mistake or what you should have been doing is that, yes, you might want to go to Oracle Cloud, but you need to work with someone who is independent cloud consulting firm. So that's not redress compliant. This is more like a technical partner. But you need to make sure that you're getting all these questions answered about the technical platform. Can we go to Oracle Cloud? You need to leave Oracle without it. Otherwise, when Oracle comes in, you have nothing to negotiate about. Price protection. You need to have a price protection for your renewal. Otherwise, you will be seeing that Oracle is offering no discounts on renewals at all. It should be anything from 0 to 5% discount. What you need to know about Oracle Cloud negotiations. Oracle Cloud is commitment. It's not pay as you go. You might have pay as you go, but then you have very little to negotiate about, no discounts. There's no possibility of reducing or canceling a support contract. Price protections, so the renewal is always based on existing contract. So if you sign a cloud contract, you have 1,000 users of an Oracle Cloud service, and then you go to Oracle and say, we only need 500 renewed. The price protection will be removed. You will be paying list prices for the renewal. First deal can offer good discounts with Oracle, but as I said, much depends on Oracle's belief if your company is moving to Oracle Cloud or not. No audit exists in Oracle Cloud. It's simply based on overconsumption. And I just want to make a warning here is that in the audit clause that Oracle have for their SaaS services, it simply says that at any time, Oracle can measure your usage. And it's quite easy that if you're using, let's say, Fusion Cloud, that you're giving users access to modules that you do not have a cloud service for. And then when it's time for renewal, Oracle basically takes up this, but you've been over-consuming for 4 to 5 years, you actually owe us $10 million. So it's that and plus the renewal fee. So it's very important that you keep track of when you're provisioning users in Oracle Cloud, do the modules, do you have a cloud service for that? Otherwise, instead of negotiation at the renewal time, you will be forced to pay many times more than you paid initially. Cloud Customer, quite popular now. It's probably the Oracle's go-to vehicle. It's for anyone who don't know, Cloud Customer is when you rent a server from Oracle. An Oracle is managing that from a system administrator. They're patching it and so on. You put that in your data center. You rent it. You buy cloud services from Oracle. It's essentially Oracle Public Cloud, but putting it in your data center, and you pay as you go. And what Oracle says is that there's no compliance issues. That's what they're selling it on. Yeah, there's no compliance issues, but it's very high risk of overconsumption because they are making when they're designing this Cloud Customer, they're saying, this is how much cloud you need, dear customer. They are telling you that. And what we can see is that the business case is that Oracle is just giving a best case business case. If you're suddenly your workloads need more Oracle, suddenly the business case is blown and you're going to pay much more than what you initially thought. Reduce your cost. We don't see the cost being reduced at all. There might be some very unique cases where they are, but essentially you have to pay the maintenance contract and the Cloud Customer. And usually if you see any savings, it might be in 4 or 5 years. And that's only conditioned on the Oracle business case holding. And essentially what Oracle is doing is that they are looking at how much are your Oracle workloads currently. They're asking you for how many processes you're using on premise. And then they're saying, okay, but this is how much you would be using in Oracle Cloud. But what if in 2 years you are actually going to be having more workloads, and you would be fine if you had the licenses, but you're going to have to pay more in the Oracle Cloud. So suddenly your business case doesn't hold up. And the Oracle says pay for what you consume, but you also have to pay for what you do not consume. So it's a case where you're committing to Oracle for 4 to 5 years, but if you do not use the Oracle Cloud Customer in the same let's say that you can't migrate all workloads, suddenly you still have to pay for the Cloud Customer. So 4 recommendations for considering Cloud Customer. Review your licensing. Just make sure that you're compliant before you move. I think the most important thing is that Oracle's business case are not really holding up to water. I've seen 5 or 6 different ones, and they're all very weak, and they're all they're very rosy. And I think Oracle need to rethink their approach before they're going to succeed with Cloud Customer. Review the Cloud Customer because you will be locked into pricing and contract terms for many years. Once you started on this road or cloud services, what we noticed, and the same, I think my friends from the Microsoft side gonna say the same. The vendor is not really willing to give you discounts or negotiate anything when it's a renewal time. So it's essentially the first time you have it to renew. Make sure that you have a cost management function to make sure that you're actually consuming the right services and that you're not over consuming or going to have too much workloads, because then you will have a large true up from Oracle. So negotiate support contracts. Essentially, I think what you can negotiate, Oracle is increasing by 4% every year on their support renewal. That's quite easy to remove, negotiate away. Either you can do that by committing to 3 years at Oracle, it's quite common, but also you can do it on a 1-year basis where you simply want to remove the annual increase 4%. You cannot negotiate 30-40% drop in your support renewal. Oracle is not doing that for you. Let's say that you're paying $10 million in support and you are an IT procurement person and you want to negotiate a 20% reduction. That's not going to be possible. What if you want to reduce your Oracle support fees? You might have to go to a third-party provider. So it could be Spinnaker, for example, that you're approaching. But just saying to Oracle that you're looking at a third-party support provider, can you give us a better offer? Oracle is not going to believe in that. You probably have to have a firm offer from the third-party support vendor to make any dent. On database support contract, you cannot do anything at all. Oracle is not willing to negotiate anything. But if you have, let's say, Siebel, EBS, PeopleSoft, JD Edwards, we have seen that there could be a reduction in support sometimes on 20-30%. But what Oracle is doing internally is that when you're asking for price, to say, okay, how many support tickets have this customer logged in the past 3 years? If you logged a lot of support tickets, why should they even willing to give you any discounts? Just remember that, and also you can, if you make a large purchase from Oracle, it could be a license or a cloud. Let's say $5 million. Oracle can make a reduction in support. So if you have, let's say, $10 million support contract, and you're about to make a large investment in Oracle Cloud or licenses, you can get whatever you're buying from Oracle, if it's above 5 million, you can make a 20% reduction in support. That's what we've seen. With that, I hope you liked it. If you want to have the presentation, you can connect with me and I will share it with you. If you're interested in more events like this, follow me or follow Readers Compliance here on LinkedIn, or you can follow us on YouTube. We have over like 250 videos about Oracle licensing and contracts. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Microsoft. Eric Flores.
Yes. Thank you, Frederick.
Yes, thank you, Frederick. I'm happy to take over here. So let's dive right in. Not a lot of numbers on this screen, but just straight away, what is Microsoft trying to sell you? Well, that should not be new, but it's basically anything related to the cloud. And one tiny side note here, they don't like to cannibalize on their on-premises revenue. So they're always trying to capture both what you already have and then sell you into a Microsoft Cloud. They often like to use a similar image to the one you see here on the screen. These are all the building blocks of their cloud. Lately, they have invested heavily in the bottom layer, their identity, security and compliance stack, and are very heavily investing time and resources in getting these into your contract. The layer above that, Microsoft Azure, we will talk a bit more about that in detail later, because this is where they see the biggest piece of the pie for the future success of Microsoft. There's a huge pie here to divide amongst a lot of the large cloud vendors in the world, and they state there's like a $3.5 trillion market cap to be devised amongst the large cloud players. If you've not heard yet of the Microsoft Power Platform, you will most likely hear of it when you are in your EA or contract volume licensing contract renewal, because Microsoft is trying to sell Power Apps in all their contractual conversations that they have. Low code, no code is very important to them, and they are developing heavily on things like Flow and Power Apps. Obviously, in yellow, the biggest star that they always want to cover is Microsoft 365 and all its components. Security and compliance, which I mentioned earlier, are tied into this as well, but this is about productivity mainly for them. LinkedIn, not a lot of activity there. GitHub, you see after the integration of GitHub into the Microsoft sphere that they started to focus more on this. And last but not least, Dynamics 365. Trade-offs is something that Microsoft really loves to do. We talk more about this in a few slides. And one of the trade-offs that they generally tend to do is saying if you want a higher discount, you should buy some of these products. And that a lot of the time that focuses on Dynamics 365. Now, there used to be a time where Microsoft came into the organization and tell you everything and anything about the product stack, but it's been evolving a bit over the past year. The Microsoft sales teams have been trained to focus more on talking about your organization. So what they very, very much like to do is talk about a strategic partnership and how they can transform your organization by using and leveraging Microsoft Cloud technology. So things like digital transformation, strategic partnership are always very high on the agenda. And once they have these conversations with you, what they do is they will try and splurge with all these invites to demos, technology centers, discussions and panels around their portfolio. And when it comes down to crunch time, your contractual renewal, they will send you a proposal with everything they've learned over the past about your organization and your interest in the Microsoft portfolio. And they will give you this proposal beefed up with everything from Microsoft 365 E5 to Dynamics to Power Apps and a large scale investments in Microsoft Azure. So to recap that, what you end up with usually is a very overambitious proposal for a contractual renewal with Microsoft. And this high cost is something that you tend to start to focus on immediately in your negotiation. And our advice is don't. And we're going to talk more about that in the coming slides. But before we do that, it's important to note a little bit about how Microsoft is organized. So generally, as an organization, the Microsoft sales team is divided up into all these account executives. An account executive is the premier responsible person for an account or a set of accounts. And this can be one large account, or it can be up to 200 customers that they're managing. And they do this together with an account technology strategist. And the account technology strategist is basically the one that is supposed to do the rollout and help you as an organization adopt the Microsoft product portfolio that you have bought. I say supposed to because oftentimes this seems to be lacking. These two people usually have an entire team of people around it, like a commercial executive or service delivery managers. Commercial executive is the role that I used to do, where you negotiate contracts on behalf of Microsoft with the end customers. Service delivery managers are the guys that need to help you in case of outages and when you have support issues. Next to that, you see a lot of solution specialists. So these are the product specific specialists that they bring to the table when you need to know more about Dynamics 365 or you want to learn about the roadmap for Microsoft Azure. Now, what tied to this are all their managers and management teams, and these roll up into geographical areas all the way up to the top, where you have Satya Nadella and his senior leadership team. Now, why am I saying this? All these people that you see on this screen here, they have different compensation plans, and this is something that really ties Microsoft up into your organization and can frustrate your negotiation. Because when you discuss with an account executive a discount that you might require for your EA renewal, they will look at it in the perspective of their own compensation plan, their revenue of their territory which they operate. Similarly to a solution specialist for a Microsoft 365, they will look at what is in the deal that you are in need to do that they could compensate it on. And this can lead to a lot of different frustrating conversations with Microsoft. So our advice is always start the discussion there, but move it up the chain. Requesting a specific discount for someone who has a very tiny revenue target is more difficult than requesting this from someone who has a couple of billion-dollar revenue target. So escalation is usually key in your Microsoft negotiations. Escalate up to the manager and the manager of the manager of the manager. And the higher up you go, the better your chances will become in negotiating a successful deal with Microsoft. One tiny sidestep, on the left of the screen, you see the business desk. If you are in negotiations around customized terms for your enterprise agreement, then you will usually end up with the business desk. And Microsoft salespeople really like to hide behind the business desk. Probably you've heard it before. In your negotiation with Microsoft, oh, we cannot do this because the business desk won't allow us. Well, that's usually, I translate it, they don't want to give it to you because 90% of the time they didn't even go and ask the business desk, they just use it to hide behind it. So business desk is a very specific organization within Microsoft that is focusing on all the custom terms of your contract. And so if you need indeed of a very high discount on a certain product for you to it being interesting for you to adopt, you will usually end up in negotiating with the business desk. Don't use the business desk as the account team as an intermediary with the business desk, but request that that person joins the table. Discuss and negotiate with that business desk. So in practice, again, what will they do? They will start with a hero offering, and that's the big fish on the table that I talked about in the first slide. And usually they will tell you, well, this is what I think that you should buy, and don't get caught in the discussion, oh, I don't want this, I don't need that, but really prepare yourself on what you think that you do need. And we will talk more about that in a bit. When you sell no to Microsoft, they might lower their offer to you by showing you a different product set, but they will also tell you that it will lead to a lower discount. Now, that's probably not what you want. So then they have you where they want you. They say, okay, if you do want this higher discount, what you need to do is buy products X, Y, and Z in order to qualify for such a discount, leading you to potentially buy licenses that you will put on the shelf. And we are here to tell you, you shouldn't do that. We have seen so many cases where this is the way of negotiating with Microsoft. And large companies and organizations like Gartner will typically tell you that this is the way to go. We are here to tell you, do not fall into this trap. A very important aspect that Microsoft is focusing on more heavily in the past years is their C-level and partner push. And what I mean by that is they will try and get into your company at the C-level, learn all they need to know by talking strategic partnerships and digital transformation, and then use that information against you in a coming negotiation. And they do the same on with your Microsoft partners that you have in your company. They will get the information from them and they will use it against you. So what do we think that you should do about this? Create well in advance your list of requirements and have this ready. Nothing, and I mean nothing, is too small in a negotiation. And every point that you think of, fight for it as hard as you would for the highest discount that you would want, because you can use this to your benefit in a later stage. But if Microsoft is not willing to grant something, maybe you can leverage an alternative. Like I said, do not get caught in their approach. So if they show you their big fish with Microsoft E5 and all these other products that you might not need, don't negotiate and on that scenario, but be prepared and have your own scenario ready. And your own scenario is not the baseline of what's in your contract. No, it should be something lower than that. As said before, you want to escalate with Microsoft. The higher up you go, the more easy you're going to get what you want. So know where you need to go. Align your company and your C-level to know that there might be a reach out needed to a higher executive within the Microsoft organization to get what you want. And always in your negotiations, assign a single point of contact. One person should be the one that is involved in all different aspects of the negotiation game. If you don't have that, you will probably fall into trap number 3, where Microsoft knows a lot more about the organization than you are aware of, and this will very much harm your negotiation. So now we'll hand over to Eric, and he will talk a bit more about the Microsoft sales process.
Yes, thank you, Floris. So yeah, the last item Floris discussed is very important, the preparation of your EA. Microsoft in general is very well prepared for the negotiation towards the client. All individuals that are working at Microsoft are highly trained. They all have a negotiation training they attended to. So everyone is familiar with the way Microsoft is working internally. In general, if you are a substantial client, Microsoft is starting the EA process internally 12, let's say 15 months ahead of the expiration date. And in general, they start off with the client 12 months ahead. And they usually tend to start the conversation with procurement. Normally, they will discuss with procurement the way they would like to see the process going in the coming 12 months. And that's your momentum as a customer to set the boundaries for the negotiation. So we always recommend clients to be very firm about who is talking to who and what are the rules of engagement. Because as Floris said, Microsoft often tends to have a very high C-level involvement. And by not setting the boundaries right for you in your negotiation, you could have a risk that Microsoft will go back to your C-level again if the negotiation does not go as anticipated by Microsoft. So you should be very crisp and clear about the process you would like to go through with Microsoft. And you can also be very strict to that. So if they don't respect the rules of engagement, just have a proper discussion with them. Usually we see all the different roles within Microsoft coming to the client in the 12 months before expiration dates. They usually organize workshops in which they demonstrate all their technology. These sessions are often very useful for the client to have insight in the recent Microsoft technology developments. But and we also recommend clients to attend them. There's no risk in that. It's always good to see what technology is available and what's Microsoft's perception on that. But We also, again, recommend you to be very considerate who attends those workshops and how the communication lines between people attending from the workshops and Microsoft are organized. We've seen too many cases where actually people internally were committing to Microsoft to certain technology, where in the end the procurement department didn't have any proper chance to negotiate anymore, because there were too many buying signals from the internal organization to Microsoft. And they have mastered this internally at Microsoft, so they're very good in playing this game. So should you. You should be prepared to do that. Trade-offs. Floris addressed it already. It's often something Microsoft wants to do, but we really recommend you not to do that at first. So we always recommend you to start off with your preparation and see what you really require as a customer. So not only what do you have currently in your contract, but also what are you using, what are you deploying on, and what is your future roadmap. That together with the bill of material you require should be your leverage for your negotiation. That phase usually is 3-4 months ahead of the expiration date. We often see a lot of clients struggling with that because they don't have enough knowledge of their internal licensing position to determine their bill of material. So we often see that we need to help our clients with that. And again, Microsoft is always pushing, as a lot of clients are using the online services nowadays, towards a deadline, but be very crisp and clear about your deadline. It cannot be the same as Microsoft's, because Microsoft is always willing to end the negotiation very quickly, but we recommend you not to get rushed. Just take it easy. And even though if your contract is expiring, just think twice before you go ahead with your renewal. We have seen that in the end, when Microsoft is needing it and you are needing it, there is often far more possible than you would anticipate at first. So having said that, the next topic is how to prepare your EA renewal. Well, we addressed it. Microsoft is starting early, so should you. Be very considerate about your EA renewal. We often see a lot of customers caught up in the here and now, especially now in these times where everything is a bit weird and hectic. But you should be very considerate to start early, because if you start early, you will be well prepared. And to be honest, the well prepared client is the client who does the best EA renewal. The in-depth analysis of your usage should be done very carefully. Often clients do have an M365 E3 suite, and they are utilizing, let's say, 50-60% of the technology that's in it. And they tend to just renew it again and have perhaps the same discount or a decreased discount on the technology they need. But you should do an in-depth analysis. Just go on through your real online services usage. You are buying the suite, but what actually cloud technology are you buying from that suite? We've seen too many cases where just by optimizing your actual usage, you could decrease your cost with 30% without having a negotiation with Microsoft. Just optimize what you need, and then you would be surprised by the amount you could save by doing that already. So that's our first, that would be the first step in your preparation towards the EA renewal. Already addressed it, but a very clear project planning with Microsoft. Have them stick to it, because otherwise, if you don't do that, they will not respect it. They will escalate within your organizations if they do not get what they want. So you should be very keen about that. If you take the lead in a negotiation, you have indeed the control of the negotiation. So we have seen too many cases where the client was just saying, well, just send me a proposal based upon our current agreement. And then you're going to get the hero offering. And we would recommend you not to do that. We would recommend you to send your own bill of material. Just state what you require, make an analysis about your current contract, what are the good things, what are the bad things, and use that in your negotiation towards Microsoft. Discounts and concessions are always determined in a case-by-case scenario. So we've seen clients using, for instance, Google technology, getting a very high aggressive discount on Microsoft technology. And we have seen clients who are fully deployed on Microsoft technology getting a very minor or perhaps no discount at all. It really depends on the case you are in. And if you want to go for the high discount, if that's important for you as a client, you should buy the Microsoft Hero Suite and negotiate it. But we often feel that that's not the way it should be. You should be buying what you would needing and not anymore. Often we've seen too many cases where clients were just committing to very large, substantial M365 E5 deals, just because they would require Teams. So we've seen that last year when COVID struck us all, and some clients in panic just bought the whole M365 suite, not knowing what all was in it. So you should be really careful about that. Having said that, all the first 5 items, be very clear about your growth ambitions towards Microsoft. They tend to choose companies who can pay for technology. So they know, for instance, now that the retail market is doing quite well in this current economic climate. They will tend to sell you all kinds of technology. So you should be aware of that. And if you share your growth ambitions, it will resonate in the internal discussion within Microsoft for what discount they can provide to you. So, for instance, if you are a client who is struck by COVID, you should also discuss that with Microsoft. Microsoft is always stating that they are going for partnerships. And in partnerships, you support each other in good times and bad times. So, be very clear about that as well. So if you are not willing to pay more, if you cannot pay more, just state that towards Microsoft, and they will take that into account. We're going to share some major errors you should not make in your negotiations, but perhaps a little spoiler for what's coming. But do never tell them the discount you're aiming for, because that will be just the bar they would be aiming for. If you would be stating, I need a 40% discount, you're not going to get that. So do not state that. Just make your own analysis and act from that, because that's your strength. If you know what you need and you know what you have, that's the best negotiation position you would be having. Floris also addressed that. Do not do trade-offs. So Microsoft is very highly trained when it comes to negotiation. So they are very eager to do trade-offs. And sometimes you see in the final phase of negotiations where the client is fed up with the negotiation, that they just want to push their hero offering and put in that M365 suite. We recommend you do not do that. Do not do a trade-off. If you just keep to your story and stick with it, it will turn up in your advantage. That's from our experience at our time at Microsoft. Last tip I'm gonna share with you now for this slide is: do not go for the one-size-fits-all strategy. Why not? Very simple. You can save more money by profiling your internal organization. Not everyone needs the same subscription or license within your company. For instance, within a retail company, you have your office employees, but you also would be having, for instance, a supermarket manager who doesn't need a full M365 E3 or E5 suite. there are separate licensing possibilities available for that. So you should also be considerate about that. Be considerate about how you're gonna profile your workforce in order to realize savings. I'm going to discuss a little bit more about the way we execute our EA renewal process, and we strongly recommend you to copy paste that into your internal approach. We would like to share our knowledge, and we think that this approach is the key to a successful EA negotiation. So first, we always start, what do we have in our EA contract or SEE contract? We make a license entitlement analysis. We do a data gathering where we analyze what data has been used by the client, and then we make an effective license positioning to see what's really required. And I now said in 30 seconds, but it's usually quite an intensive project to have that all in scope. And you should be taking your time for that. So approximately 3 to 6 months should be enough to have a proper investigation. Then that should be your starting point to building off your bill of material. So you have your first scenario in place. What do we need from what we are actually using? And then in addition, we often recommend with your internal architects to have a discussion about the future, what possible Microsoft technology could be interesting for your organization. And it's also a moment of alignment internally to see what could we possibly add in the negotiation towards Microsoft. And if you have done that, we recommend you to make a cost modeling where you put all the scenarios together, and you will choose for 1 or 2 scenarios that you're going to use in your negotiation. And then in the final stage, the fun begins. You can start your negotiation with Microsoft. It's important that you do a benchmark with other companies that are that are in your line of business to see if you are getting the discount you deserve based upon your specific situation. And it gives you the momentum to compare the proposals. Not often for this is not applicable for very large companies, but for smaller companies, it could be very interesting to, for instance, have an investigation to buy from different countries, from different licensing partners. So there's not one road that leads to Rome. You should be very open to discuss that with your partners and Microsoft. Well, that's it for me for now. So I'm going to hand over to Floris back again.
Thank you. So let's dive a bit into what we see a lot happening on what you're able to negotiate. And let's start with the easy one. Discounts are very important. But what we tend to notice in our dealings with USR clients is that discount tends to be the main focus. And we're here to tell you that it starts again with the preparation. You can get a lot more done if you know if you're overusing or underusing the suite of products that you're currently buying. We do projects where we see everyone, like Eric said, getting the same license type. But if you are able to differentiate these users into the different parts of your organization, you can quickly see that you can save money by adjusting from one license type to multiple license types. And if your organization doesn't allow for it, then use it in your negotiation. So then you can tell the people at Microsoft, okay, I'm willing to sign up to E3 or even E5, but I'm not using these products at the moment. So I want a discount that reflects the usage that I really have. And these are the types of discussions that you want to have with Microsoft, because they are willing to listen to this reasoning. Because in the transformation to a cloud services company, what is top of mind for a lot of people within Microsoft is under usage of their cloud products. because their cloud grew so heavily, the stock market reacted so positively. But after a while, people started asking the right questions. Hey, you sell a lot of cloud, but is it actually being used as well? And then they came to the shocking conclusion that a lot was sold but not used. And then the trust in the Microsoft Cloud really diminished a little bit a couple of years ago. As such, the key now is to actually have you adopt the technology. So if you can overlay a great roadmap that will strengthen your negotiation and will actually lead to higher discounts. Now, the second thing, most of you probably will be negotiating enterprise agreements, and an enterprise agreement is not that flexible in itself. But Microsoft, in specific types of deals, will try and limit your flexibility even further by locking cloud services into the agreement for the entire term of the contract without any way of scaling them down upon your anniversary, as is normally the case within your EA. So when you're asking for very high discounts at Microsoft, they will tend to counter with, okay, but then you need to sign up for the entire term with a minimum threshold of this amount of users. Our suggestion is you don't need to. Just go back to them, tell them that the cloud should be flexible and transparent, and they will remove these clauses from your contract. Now, on the price lock front, when you have your roadmap crisp, clear, and ready, use this to your advantage as well. If you know that in a couple of years' time you are going to use or have an increased interest in some of the products that Microsoft offers, already put them on your price list in the future pricing table, or buy one of their product. This will help you towards the future in your rollout, because when you need to go back to Microsoft to renegotiate additional products in your EA, the first thing they will ask, how much are you willing to commit? And if you say, I'm willing to commit 0 users, then they will give you a 0% discount, probably. If you put these on your contract from day one, you can roll out in the rollout schedule that you see fit and start with 1 to 10, 5, maybe 100 users and grow into the product. Also, if you still focus heavily on premises products, and most contracts still have these software products in the EA, negotiate your true-up pricing. You never know what happens towards the future. You never know if Microsoft will make any licensing changes, and a discount on a true-up is always welcome. If you, for instance, look at Microsoft Azure and the Azure Hybrid Benefit that I cover in another training on our YouTube channel, it might even make sense to buy new on-premise server licenses in order to bring down the cost of your Azure VMs. Finally, a lot of organizations are stuck with an EA, but don't limit your focus on that, especially for smaller type companies in the 500 to a few thousand employee range. A CSP contract will give you greater flexibility and usually will give you a better price. So definitely look out for all your options. Now, you see a lot of big crosses here, and I'm going to preface this by saying that you might be able to negotiate terms in your contract that I put on the slide here and we'll discuss. But generally speaking, Microsoft does not like to touch most of their contractual language, because they say we're creating precedents, and if we need to change one thing for you, we need to change it for everyone. But in your review, you should always take this into account. So do review all the documents that are attached to your contract. Review the business and services agreement, review the enterprise agreement document and enrollments, but also very detailed review of the product terms and the online services terms and the associated data processing agreement. List all your requirements that you are not comfortable with, because Microsoft will see your entire list of requirements that you push towards them, and they will start to freak out. and this can leverage your incentives on other fronts by if they're not willing to grant you incentives on these types of things. So with the online services terms, generally speaking, if they need to change anything here, they say, well, this is a technical adjustment that we need to make to our cloud service. So if you require this, we need to do this for everyone, so we're not going to do it. Still mention them. And there are a lot of exceptions out there in the world already. Microsoft does make a lot of exceptions, for instance, with the Dutch government or with the NHS in the UK. These have certain types of frameworks that are very beneficial to them. And they might be beneficial to you as well. So learning more about this is something that we are willing to cover in another session as well. But there's not enough time to go into this right now. The business and services agreement, these hold clauses like guarantees, liability, confidentiality, the right to verify compliance, fight heavily for these clauses. But I guarantee you, unless you are a Fortune 100 company, it's going to be quite, or maybe Fortune 500, it's going to be quite difficult to get changes based on these contractual documents. Now, one thing that I want to point out, the Microsoft Enterprise Agreement is usually overlooked, but always look at your acquisition, divestitures, and mergers clause, because you never know what might be on the horizon. But it's kind of an icky clause where they state a certain percentage that you need to, your company needs to reduce in order to renegotiate your contract, and you don't want to get stuck in the nitty-gritty and have these difficult discussions. So make a point of this as well in your negotiation with Microsoft. Then if we continue on specifically on the modern workplace front, so anything Microsoft 365 related, we want to give a few pointers on what we feel are things to watch out for and what you need to be able to negotiate in a good Microsoft Enterprise Agreement contract. So again, the roadmap you are making for your organization is key here, because it will help you to tell them that you initially might want a very large discount on a suite of products because you have underutilization of this suite. Now, Microsoft will counter with that by potentially offering you a ramp discount. And a ramp discount is interesting to them because it will set up a higher price toward the end of the contract. And they think that that is the way they can reduce the contract in the coming 3 years. I'm here to tell you that it doesn't work like that way, because always calculate back your current ramp discount towards an average value and go out from that perspective in your new negotiation. If we're looking at aggressive discounts, then the Microsoft 365 E5 components are very key here. So if there's interest here, your roadmap should be able to tell you what you need to focus on, and discounts in the range of 40-50% are not unheard of. Microsoft is willing to invest heavily on this. They want to get rid of your point solutions within your company. So do use that to your benefit. What we see a lot that a lot of organizations are not doing is a not to exceed price. This is very common in the Dynamics 365 sphere, and I think it's being taken from the Salesforce playbook. But you should always try this with your modern workplace as well. You don't want to get caught in 3 years' time that you have a discussion on a high discount that you have gotten from Microsoft or Microsoft 365 E3, and they say, well, it's 3 years into the future. We have this very great new product for you, and if you don't buy that, you get a 0% discount. Then you can always fall back and say, okay, I'll take the little bit of uplift, extend my contract for 3 years, and I'm a happy customer. eSIF, it's becoming more difficult to negotiate, but always make this request to them. That's a very easy give from a Microsoft side, and it will help you reduce cost on other parts of your organization. Again, as stated before, non-company-wide commitment. definitely don't get sucked into signing up for a 3-year term without the option to reduce your cloud subscription licenses. Now, and if you have done your profiling of your users, and you figure out that you have a lot of people working in maintenance or on the factory floor, etc., an F1 or an F3 license might be well suited for these types of users. However, there's a caveat: they don't allow an access to an on-premise server. So in case you have this need, do request for Microsoft to make a change in this. We see this a lot, for instance, in healthcare, where Microsoft is actually doing this upfront. They already give this to you without you asking for it, but it should go into other industries that Microsoft deals with as well. On top of this, if there are many users sharing a device within your organization, then also have the discussion about signing up only for the devices that are being used by these shared users, because that will limit your cost out as well. Now we want to focus a bit on Microsoft Azure as well, because it's a very difficult, different licensing model for Microsoft. And we need to start here by saying that in order to be able to get some of these benefits, you would need to commit. And that can be either prepayment or a paper commitment, where you, like with AWS, tell Microsoft how much you're going to spend over the certain term of a contract. And in signing up to such a commitment, you are able to request certain incentives. First and foremost is the Azure Commitment Discount. This is a dynamic discount that you get on all Microsoft Azure services, and it will, as said, will be dynamic. So if the price lowers, the discount goes with it. Now, we tend to advise customers to stay away from a prepayment, but if you have budget remaining and you want to pay upfront towards Microsoft, then by all means be our guest. Because it will get you certain incentives, but it will remove flexibility for you, and it will be a double-edged sword. The amount of customers that we've seen that sign up to a prepayment but end up not spending the entire amount before the end of the contract is quite staggering, and they will keep the funds, so they will not return any unspent prepaid Azure commitment. On this front, Microsoft is quite eager to sign you up for a longer term. 5 years might sound like a long time, and it is in the cloud space, but Microsoft is very interested and willing to offer 5-year deals on Microsoft Azure. If there's items preventing you from adopting Microsoft Azure, always request line item specific discounts. They will be able to review this, and usually they have to go to the Microsoft Corp division, but there are definite benefits to this, and it will get you easier the discount that you need, instead of asking for this across the board and as an Azure commitment discount. Another aspect, point number 5, is Azure credits. This is basically free Azure money. They will deposit it into your account. It will immediately reduce your Azure spend month over month, and it will be your entire charges will be consumed against these Azure credits. Now, Microsoft is pushing a new contractual vehicle called the Microsoft Customer Agreement. And they're telling customers that you can't renew Azure in your EA, EAS, or SCE. Well, you can push a little bit harder. We advise to stick to the old model and old way of licensing Azure in your EA, because it will have a pricing threshold, meaning if you sign up to Azure in EA, your pricing can never exceed the price that you started with. And if you sign up to an MCA, it's more like a CSP model. Your price list will be refreshed month over month, and your cost might, depending on the amount of price increases, might fluctuate a lot. As I said earlier as well, Azure Hybrid Benefit, we have a training around this. It might make economic sense to buy Windows Server licenses on-prem, use them in conjunction with your Azure VMs to reduce the price. Do check out our training on this as well, as it can save you a lot of money. And finally, if you're negotiating a new contract and you currently have unpaid overage charges and you want and are willing to do a prepayment, you can request to reduce the overage from your prepayment, as such reducing the amount of invoices and lowering your immediately lowering your prepaid amount. So use that to your benefit in certain situations. For the last slide, I'm going to hand it back to Eric to talk about mistakes that could kill your negotiation.
Thank you, Floris. So we briefly touched this already, but we felt we should share 6 tips that could potentially kill your negotiations. You really should not make. One is it, and I already saw it in the comments, is involving your Microsoft partner. So there's no harm in having advice from your licensing partner, but you should be very considerate about the information you would be willing to share with them. Because often we see that Microsoft partners are awarded by selling off the hero offerings from Microsoft. So in most cases, you don't have a really independent advisor on board. And this could potentially really kill your negotiation. We've seen too many cases where the client was very open about what they shared with their partner. And the partner, they just communicated it all back to Microsoft, and it killed their negotiation. So be very considerate by doing that. Second one is, and that one we've seen a lot, especially in the countries where there is a very good relationship with Microsoft, is a verbal agreement from the account team stating, well, you have this amount of discount now, and we have a good relationship, and you are investing in our technology, so we will give you that the next time as well. It can be very good to have that information, but if it's not in an agreement or an email, we would not recommend you to take that for granted. Be very considerate about that as well. I briefly touched it. Don't ask for a discount. It can be very easy to say, well, I want a 40% discount on M365 E5. But again, if you do all your homework and do it line by line, you will end up by paying less than getting a high discount. Just buy what you need and have a good strategy around it. And in the end, you will pay less. Being transparent is good, and especially in the way where we have to deal with clients that are opening up to Microsoft, that they are embracing that partnership of working with each other. It can be very difficult for you from procurement and from the internal organization to have a good discussion about that, because if your CEO or CEO is committing to Microsoft to certain technology because of a partnership, it can be very killing for your negotiation. So you should have a strategy around that. Just think about it. The deadlines, Microsoft is really pushing. Well, we have our year event in June, and we need to have an agreement before that. Otherwise, you will have issues with your online services. We know for a fact that it isn't the case, and in 9 out of 10 cases, there is no issue in renewing late. So just be aware of that. Don't be pushed, and don't feel the stress internally as well about the deadline. We can also share our thoughts with you offline on that. And again, also related to item 3, do not do trade-offs. If you know what you need, you don't need to go into and let you persuade into the trade-off. In the end, if you will make an analysis for yourself, and we've done many, we see customers buying what they need, spending the less money in 36 months. So that are the 6 mistakes that we want to share with you. There are quite some more, but maybe for another session. Having said that, this is the end of our presentation. Of course, we have, as Redas Compliance, a YouTube channel and a company page. So we really would appreciate if you would follow us there for the future. There will be more coming content up in the next coming weeks. So please sign up for that. And think now, perhaps Frederick, it's good to evaluate and perhaps have a short Q&A about the presentations we have done in the past 90 minutes.
Sure. I have a question. I was looking through in the comments field. So if you have any questions, just ask them there. There's like a 10-15 seconds delay, but there's a question here maybe for you guys to answer. Let me remove this one. We go here. Tom Davis is asking, any advice on a situation where you have an existing EA which you know is below the best benchmark discount rates and want to achieve a better discount on renewal? What do you do?
Yeah, I think in that case, often is that they say, well, I used to get a 30% discount and now I need that again. Then the request from Microsoft or the feedback from Microsoft will be, okay, yeah, that was 3 years ago, and then you indeed got a 30% discount. But in order to qualify for that same discount right now, you need to buy these different types of products. What will help here is, again, and we said it many times, is your preparation. Tell Microsoft that you need this discount for whatever reason it might be. But what usually helps very much is telling them what you're actually using and what your roadmap is, again, and then using logic to persuade them to give you the same discount. And time is always important. Always make sure that they believe that you have more time than they have. Because when it comes down to the wire, and we've seen this again and again over the past months as well, the biggest concessions you're going to get at the final days of your negotiation.
Okay. So there's a lot of people here asking if you can upload the Microsoft slide deck. I have uploaded the Oracle slide deck to this event. So if you can do it now before people are going to leave or drop off, I think it would be appreciated by the people here.
Yeah, I will do that.
Yeah.
So is there any more questions here for us? I'll leave it.
Yeah. And also, if attendees are not comfortable sharing their questions here, they always can send us a direct message, and we will make time for that.
Yeah, and I think if you liked this event here and would like to have invites to future events, the best thing you can do is to just follow Redas Compliance and License Q here on LinkedIn, the company page, because when we have future events, you will get the notification about that. Here's a question. Larger discounts when near the MS end of financial year. I think you did say yes, right?
Yes, but it also has to depend on timing. So Microsoft has some internal metrics where it's determined whether the deal is registered in their financial year. So we have a lot of customers who have an EA renewal date on the 1st of July. And they are anticipating to do a very good deal because it's Microsoft fiscal year end in June. But it doesn't work that way because Microsoft internally, they get their internal revenue based upon all the deals invoiced in June. And if you have your EA renewal on the 1st of July, it will be invoiced on the 1st of July. And it will be outside of Microsoft's financial year. So yes, you can get a better discount at the fiscal year end, but you should be very keen on having the correct information and a good strategy to determine whether the large discount should be applicable to you. So yes, yeah.
So I have another question because I think you and Mirek have both worked at a large reseller before.
Mhm.
So Oracle does most of their business direct with the customers, so resellers are not a big part of it.
Mhm.
But I wonder because I remember working at that big reseller that 80% of their profits were basically coming from Microsoft kickbacks many times, right? There that you to transact the EA, and then Microsoft is giving the reseller a huge amount of money if they consume cloud or if they do different things. And I wonder, what would you caution people who are listening now? What would you caution companies who are just thinking, I'm using a reseller to help me with my EA? Is there anything that they should be wary of?
Yeah, I think you should search for a licensed partner that can really bring some added value to you. What we seen so far in many cases that most cases the customer is negotiating directly with Microsoft, and then they choose the LSP, and the only thing they do is manage the true up on the anniversary date, and that's about it. We've seen many cases where there isn't too much added value from the licensing partner added into that. And then, of course, what we always try to do is make an analysis. Well, what does the partner do, and what is the compensation they get for their activities? And you would be surprised about the amount of fee that a Microsoft partner gets for closing an EA renewal. In most cases, the fees are declining. So Microsoft is cutting down on the partners, and the partners are now looking into other earning models, which also could potentially be a risk for you as a client, because you are relying on your licensing partner to do the fulfillment. You have the feeling that they are being independent and transparent, but you really should validate whether that's the case. And we can also help you with that to check if that's really the case. So you should be very cautious about that. And often it's very easy to retrieve the information.
Well, exactly. And my experience working at one of those big resellers is that when it comes to Microsoft, they're almost the same company. Many of the employees at the reseller, their salaries are even paid by Microsoft. So instead of hiring Microsoft salespeople, they pay the resellers to help. So it's a case of where if Microsoft says jump, the reseller is like, how high? They're doing everything what Microsoft is telling them.
They're just fully depending on it, and that will not change for the coming years, because Microsoft will grow and they will be more successful in the technology they will sell in the coming years. So that won't change in the coming years, and our clients should be aware of that.
All right, I think this is it for today. Thank you everybody who were watching today.
I'd like to touch on more topic, if that's okay.
Sure.
A couple of times the question about unified support contracts for Microsoft. A little bit more background on that is that they, with the switch to unified support after Premier Services, they are now calculating your unified support cost based on a percentage value of your EA contract. Don't agree to it. You can get your unified support contract at the same value of your previous Premier Services contract. We've seen many cases. Just negotiate the hell out of it. Tell them that you're not willing to pay any more than what you used to pay, and you will be able to get the result that you require. Finally, it is even possible to add unified support to your enterprise agreement contract. Microsoft doesn't want you to know this, but it is possible. So especially there, you can really use that as a leverage, because they want to try and keep it within the Microsoft subsidiary, because unified support is still a subsidiary pushed product from the services department. And if you put it in your EA, it becomes built out of the headquarters of Microsoft, and they will lose the revenue. So then they will be really focused on retaining their revenue, and they will give you the discounts you need on your unified support contract. Just a final comment for the guys asking the questions. Hope you're still online. If not, do listen to the recording.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, Floris. I think I hope it was helpful, and again, thank you for taking the time to listen to us today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
See you
Okay.
soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.